Toss aside the touchy-feely notions of love in business and recognize the real power it holds. Welcome to the Love is Just Damn Good Business podcast with host Steve Farber. Drawing on his work with a wide variety of companies from the Fortune 100 to smaller family-owned businesses, Farber shares inspiring interviews with business leaders and proven strategies for how you can create experiences that your customers will love by developing a culture that your employees, teammates, and colleagues love working in. Discover why and how love, at the end of the day, is just damn good business for you too. Here's your host, Steve Farber.
Hi, this is Steve Farber, and welcome to another episode of the Love is Just Damn Good Business podcast. This podcast is brought to you by the Extreme Leadership Institute. And that is no coincidence, because I happen to be the founder and CEO of that company. You can check out what we do at extremeleadership.com and download a couple of cool case studies and give you some, get yourself some resources on why, after all, love is just damn good business, as the name of this podcast would suggest. My guest today is my dear friend, Mike Strohl. Mike is the president and CEO of a company called Entisys360. He's been with that company since 1994. They are a technology company. They are involved in consulting around IT infrastructure, virtualization, security, cloud solutions, all that stuff that's going on behind the scenes in every company that keeps the world humming, basically. They have incredible partnerships with some really impressive companies like Citrix, Cisco, Microsoft, and many, many others. And Mike is at the helm of this great company, and is, as it turns out, also no coincidence, a real firm believer and practitioner of this idea that love is really at the foundation of what great leadership is and what great business is. So it is my great pleasure to welcome my friend Mike Strohl to the podcast. Hey, Mike, thanks for being here with me.
Glad to be here today, Steve. Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, I've really been looking forward to it. You and I have had many conversations over the years. None of them, if I'm not mistaken, have been recorded before. I don't think it should change the tenor of our conversation.
Not at all.
The people listening. So where are you? You're usually in Orange County, California, but you're not right now.
I am in Big Bear Lake, March 17th, or St. Patrick's Day, when everything shut down. We decided to quarantine in the mountains, and as things have continued to be crazy, we haven't worked too hard to leave our little mountain retreat.
Oh, very nice. So you were at sea level, and then
Yes.
you headed up into the mountains and have stayed there. What did you do? Go up there for a weekend and then decide to stick around?
Just decided to stick around. Very quiet. Didn't have to work hard to social distance. It's a little crazy now. I guess this area is considered one of the top, if not the top, vacation destination in the United States, and can't figure out why, because it's a pretty small place, but it's a lot of activity, and I think people just want to get out of LA County and San Bernardino County, etc. So
It makes it a little harder to social distance unless you're holed up in your cabin, I guess. Yeah. I'm assuming from the panel on the wall behind you that it is more of a cabin.
Yes, definitely cabin-esque.
Yeah, great. Well, of course, the wonder of technology is we're having this conversation and looking at each other. Although, many people that listen to this podcast don't actually watch it on YouTube, but you and I can see each other, which is cool. And of course, I'm in San Diego at sea level. So let's just start a little bit with. I'd love to hear your recollection of how you and I first connected, because it's been a number of years now. It's been at least, I'm going to say, 10 years or more.
I definitely. So the story in my mind, and as I get older, my mind may embellish the stories a little bit, but not on purpose, is at some point in my life, somebody gave me your books. At the time, they were The Radical Leap and The Radical Edge. And I, for the life of me, cannot remember who gave them to me, and nobody's come clean or realizes that I'm in search of that answer, so to speak. But I fell in love with them, and I would read them a couple times a year and over again, and really never shared them with anyone until you did. I wasn't sure if I should share them. I didn't know if people would think I was a little crazy to think this whole concept of love in business was not just something you can prescribe to do, but it is natural, so to speak. If you really love what you do, that's really the key in all of this. But you did a campaign where for every X books you bought, you were donating books to teachers because you wanted to help the education system, and because you thought there was a natural correlation between teachers' love of students and teaching and what have you. And that's when I realized I was being selfish, actually, with my non-sharing of what I had coveted so much. And so I went out and bought a bunch of books and started sharing them with people. And what I started to find was that they all had, or many of them had, the same experiences, so to speak. And so it was somewhere in there that I wrote you an email or a letter, or I don't know, sent you a fax. Back in those days, who knows what the tech was?
It was
Sent a carrier pigeon,
right.
And you
Before you go to phase two, I got a question about what you just said, because obviously the purpose of this discussion is not simply to have a commercial on my books, which is a wonderful thing. This whole dynamic of wonderful for me, but this whole dynamic of love as a core business practice. What I'm hearing you say is that at the time that you read Leap and Edge, which both, of course, address this head on, you were running a company, right?
Yes.
And yet you felt that love in business really rang your bells. It was really important to you, but for some reason, you kept those books in a drawer and you didn't share that with anybody. You didn't share that idea with anybody. Can you remember why? I mean, what was the hesitation? Why were you reluctant?
It's an easy answer, actually. I know at the time, I felt it would have made me vulnerable to certain things about me that maybe I didn't want people to know. Even though I was living and practicing it without stating that I was living and practicing it, so to speak, overall. And that concept of vulnerability, we all have at times in life and in business. But you also at one point or at some point, hopefully get past that, realize that you should have confidence and trust in those people that you say that you love and the business that you say that you love, and share some of the mechanics, so to speak, or let them under the covers and let them see you for what and who you are, because it does explain things. I mean, people that really care about their businesses and really care about those that they serve, whether it's their employees, their customers, their partners in the community, it's not a single threaded thing, so to speak. And the minute you open up like that, you find that people open up to you even more, which then allows you to practice this, so to speak. I hate the word practice because we do it all it's more than practice, we just do it, and it's cool. So
the hesitation was, in many ways, there was some fear about stepping into unknown territory. How would people respond if they knew that this is where you were intentionally coming from? In other words, it wasn't like you suddenly changed your behavior. Your behavior was already there.
Correct.
But you didn't want to pull back the curtain and say, well, this is really about love, in fear of how people might respond to that as, the soft, squishy, whatever, make you vulnerable. That means you're weak or whatever. But then what you found is when you took that step, not only were you not criticized for it, but you found it reciprocated more.
Correct. Yeah.
And it's a really important leadership principle there, Mike, because this idea of leading by example that we all know is is really core to any great leader. I mean, this is conventional wisdom, right? So a lot of times people think, well, that's really all I have to do
Mhm.
is behave in a particular way, and people will follow my example, and that's a great thing. But there's another element to it, and that's the expression, the articulation of what's important.
Mhm.
So, in other words, to say out loud, this is what's important, and then at the same time to model the behavior that's congruent with that.
Mhm.
So it's not enough just to talk a good game and not follow up, and it's also not enough just to be acting in the great noble way without being overt as to what that is. Once you put those two together, that's when the magic starts to happen, and that's what I'm hearing happen for you.
Mhm.
And the catalyst was that campaign that said, "Hey, you buy a book and I'll give a book,"
Mhm.
and that
Yep.
kind of brought you out of the drawer, as it were.
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. No, that was definitely out of the drawer. Yes, that is correct. Never heard that term before.
Yeah, neither have I.
Cool. Yeah, I think I agree with exactly what you just said. I think especially the part where you can't talk a good game and not bring a good game, so to speak. And when you raise the stakes to the level of love, if you're not being authentic in your actions, people will see through you and you will actually get the exact opposite of what you were trying to get. So the bottom line is you can like read your books, you can write a bunch of stuff down, you can do a speech, but if you are not authentic in living it, um, people will see right through that. And so, my challenge to everybody is find your authenticity within this. Don't just preach what's here, so to speak.
Right. And then, our first face to face meeting was I remember it. It was here in San Diego. We had connected on I think you sent me an email,
Yes.
and then we had a conversation on the phone,
Hmm.
and there was something. I'm just kind of flashing back on this. It was around Christmas time, I think.
Well,
And
we're in San Diego, so it's the same temperature as it is the
I know,
rest.
I
So
know,
I can't gauge when it was.
but I'll tell you why I remember it was around Christmas time because after I got that email from you, I called you,
Hmm.
and I believe it was Christmas Eve day. So I wasn't surprised that you weren't, that I didn't get you live, and I left you a voicemail,
Hmm.
and then you responded to that voicemail. Then you were coming through San Diego. We sat down and had a cup of coffee. That's just a personal color commentary on our history together. Um, but you shared with me in the beginning this story about how, and it has really stuck with me about how you were holding on to these ideas versus
Hmm.
being overt with it.
Hmm.
So in your business, I'd like to find out what that looks like for you and what it looks like for Entisys 360. But before we do, give us a little bit of context about your business so that the folks listening, can have a sense of, where this is all unfolding for you.
Got it. Wow, where do I start? Are you looking for kind of the overall business?
Yeah. So first of all, real simple. What do you guys do?
Well, you said it pretty good in the beginning. I was actually impressed. Even though we've known each other for a long time, sometimes it's hard to describe. But we provide technology services and sales to um, mid-sized to enterprise companies and government agencies, primarily in California, but across the United States. When you and I met, we probably were a company of about 35 people. We're now 170 people. When you and I met, we had offices in Northern California and Irvine, and now we have 6 offices throughout the state overall, including in San Diego. So you can have excuses to come have more cups of coffee with you. And it's actually blossoming quite nicely down there right now. So that's cool. You mentioned some of the manufacturers that we work with, but the key is really around the people and the services. that we provide. And it's, I believe that we're like an A-player type company. So whether we're doing security consulting or we're doing work from home, which is a big deal right now, consulting, um, or we're doing cloud consulting because that's a big thing right now, or collaboration like this Zoom call or Cisco WebEx or Microsoft Teams. All these are relevant to this. I would be as bold to say something that actually the CEO of Microsoft said recently at a conference that they were doing virtually. And it was kind of one of those things I wanted to put in the drawer and not come out. But the more I thought about it, the more I felt empowered to it. And he basically said us, as what you would call value-added reseller or systems integrator, are digital first responders. And in this time where you have what I consider to be, doctors and nurses and teachers, and those are the real first responders that are out there. To try and lump us into that category makes me a little bit nervous. But then you start thinking about it, and those doctors and those nurses and those emergency services people can't do what they need to do right now without the technology. And that's a calling to a higher power as a whole. So I get excited and passionate. I don't go around trying to act like we're them, but it does increase the value of the mission that we have overall.
Well, one of my favorite quotes that I've been sharing with people for a couple of decades now actually came from John Chambers, the founder of Cisco, of course, and he referred to the importance of the higher meaning and purpose in our work.
Mm-hmm.
What's the higher meaning and purpose in the work? It's not enough just to pay people. It's not enough, although that's important. It's not enough to provide a good product or service, although that's important. But when we get a sense of what the impact of what we do is, then that generates energy for us as human beings, because we want to be a part of something great. So to refer to you guys and your industry as another category of first responders, I think it's a wonderful thing, particularly for your employees, right? I mean,
Sure.
for the team at Entisys360 to really own that for themselves, whether or not you go out and crow about it, but to know that for ourselves, that we're enabling the people on the front line to do the work that they're doing. And that's no bullshit. I mean, that really is what you guys are doing. That has to feel amazing.
It is. Well, you have to kind of do a gut check before you say anything. And that's maybe why I started heading towards the drawer with it. It's like, do I really believe this? Is this really real? Am I, and they like to term things ambulance chasing with marketing, or is it real? Do I really feel this? And as I thought about it more and more, we work with many, many hospitals, government agencies, companies that are trying to support their own employees and keep them working, so to speak. So, all those things suddenly say, we don't own it all, but we have our place in, this scenario that we're all trying to deal with the best that we can.
So you've gone from 35 employees to 170.
Yes.
Which is impressive growth by anybody's standards. Tell us about your employees.
Oh, they're awesome. I think I said before, we're a company filled with A players, and that's what we require. And you can describe that a lot of ways. And maybe the best way I can describe that is that you can be really good at something, but be a terrible human being. And so I like to think of them as A human beings first and A players second. And that really runs through the core of our DNA. They're all very innovative and creative. They all have a choice to work anywhere else. I mean, we're in California, for goodness sake, and with all the big, huge tech companies that continue to emerge and all the money going into that industry, I have to find a way to keep them excited about working for us. And that comes in two forms: excitement about the work they do, and excitement about the people they do it with. And those are my real retention strategies as a whole. And I have many that have been with me 10, 15, 20 plus years. You did an interview with me in my office in Irvine several years ago. And most of those employees that were in that are still with us today. And I take great pride in that. And I care very much about the people and their families and what have you. And had it not been that way for all these years, trying to retain people in this time, and these are people that can go get jobs. They're not on the unemployment line no matter what, requires that to be there at the core of the business. Otherwise, we would have real problems through this.
So they love the work they do, and they love the people they're doing that work with.
Mm-hmm.
So what is it about working in your company, and what is it about the dynamics of the team that people tend to love so much?
Like I said, they're all awesome people. I mean, it just starts with that. They like each other a lot. They have fun together. They're all entrepreneurs, or the majority of them are. In my personal opinion, we don't manage down. That's another major thing. My view is, I don't run a company. I built a platform where really smart, creative people can do really smart, creative things and make a difference in the world. And so, and I strive to continue to do that. And as the world changes, that platform has to change. And even the platform for how we interact with one another and care for one another is a part of that.
So technically speaking, they're not entrepreneurs, right? Because they work in the company versus
Correct.
going out and starting their own enterprise. So what is it about them that inspires you to characterize them as entrepreneurs?
And maybe the right word is innovators, so to speak, but they have a lot of latitude to create, bring new ideas that don't have to go to committee, so to speak, to step outside the box, I suppose, without fear of whatever happening. Another thing that I've done that is really important in this industry is there's a lot of companies like mine being acquired by private equity or whatever, public companies. And I originally was not interested in doing that just because I wasn't interested in doing that. And I didn't think anything of it. But what I found is that there are so few companies like mine left that are at our size that have the capacity to deliver kind of the full suite of solutions that aren't controlled by a board that is being run by a bunch of financial people. That's actually a strategic advantage, and not just for my employees, because we can just decide to do things together and not have to go through committee, so to speak. And secondly, we can do creative things for our customers that our competitors can't, because they do have to go through committee or what have you. And so we've got something special. We know it. During this pandemic time, we have recruited some incredible talent into our business, just spectacular talent. And it is for that very reason. We had the culture and the platform to begin with. We stuck together across all of this, which brought us closer together in many ways. Obviously, there were challenges too. It's not all butterflies and unicorns, right? During this, but we have enough of that we've actually also been able to increase our talent posture, if you want to call it that, with some fabulous people that just want a home where they can really go bring it to their customers.
The reason I wanted to explore that characterization of entrepreneur for a minute is it kind of pushed a button of mine a little bit, because I spend a lot of time with entrepreneurs. And there's this attitude that exists among many entrepreneurs. I mean, real entrepreneurs, people that are going out there. When I say real, I mean, they're starting their own company, right? I think it's a very simplistic definition. But the attitude that I hear from many of those entrepreneurs or wantrepreneurs is
Great word.
That's the only way to be happy.
Hmm.
And if you're not an entrepreneur, if you're not out there starting your own company, if you're not quote unquote your own boss, then you're essentially less than. You're a slave somehow. And I never got it, because if somebody's really an entrepreneur and they want to build a company, that means that they're going to have people working for them. So what does
Hmm.
that say about the people that they're going to have working for them? And what does it say about their attitude for the
Hmm.
people that are working for them versus starting their own companies? So what I'm hearing you say is it's not about starting your own company, it's about having an environment where you can make decisions. It's about having an environment where your talents are recognized and you're
Hmm.
given the support that you need to do your best work. And if that's the environment that you can create and that I can be in as an employee of a company, that's that's a beautiful way to live.
Hmm.
And the gift that you give in a lot of ways is you take off of their shoulders the other side of entrepreneurship, which
Hmm.
is all the terror that
Yeah.
comes along with trying to make payroll when you're starting up, and and trying to shouldering the responsibility of everybody else relying on you in order to feed their families. So what you described to me actually sounds like, for most people, a best of both worlds kind of a scenario. I can I can be my best. I can work with great people, and I can put all of my energy into doing great things for our clients without worrying about how, all the other things that come along with starting a business.
Sounds good to me.
And,
I
and you are the entrepreneur in all of this, but
well, yeah, entrepreneurs. I love people that want to go and do their own thing. I have a lot of people that have put business plans in front of me, and I never judge them based on whether I think they have good or bad ideas. Half the great, if not more than half the great companies that are out there were started by people who were told they would never be successful in what they were trying to accomplish. You have to be willing to fight through that, which means you may be on the successful or unsuccessful side of things. It's more on the journey that I like to talk to them about. It's harder than you think. It takes longer than you think, and your business plan day one won't look anything like your business on day 365, let alone year five, et cetera, assuming you make it through that. And so it's I encourage it, and I think people should do it, but it's not for everybody. And so, if you can have an environment where people can have all that without the baggage, like as you said, kind of, then it's a cool thing to do, because to you want them right on the edge. Sorry, I had to give you a little bit of a prop there, of entrepreneurship, but wanting to work maybe in an environment. So, and there are people that we brought in that to start up, let's say in our industry, there's so much complexity around. It's really basic stuff, but getting the vendor certifications and all the things that go along. If you just bring them in and say, that's done, that's 5 to 10 years worth of work, now go and do your thing. Well, that's also an acceleration of opportunity for them, as well as a opportunity for us.
Yeah, I want to come back to something you said a little bit ago about how it really starts with hiring great people,
Mm-hmm.
which of course is something that everybody wants to do. Everybody wants to hire great people.
Mm-hmm.
So what is it about you guys that enables you to hire so many great people?
Ah, I think it's an easy question for me to answer. Um, First of all, great people are very difficult to get. Truly great people, they're very difficult to get, and so one, you don't interview those people; you get to know them, so to speak. I have one recently that I brought on who's amazing. We got to know each other for a year and a half. We started the conversation, got together, talked about ideas, decided we liked one another. And then when certain other factors occurred, we were ready to go. We knew each other and we knew we could do good things together. Overall, you can't get it in a single interview, or two or three or five different people interviewing the same person for 30 minutes. It's just those are numbers games, in my opinion. And I've used the same formula, if you want to call it that. I wouldn't say I have this all prescribed, but with acquisitions. And so I've made 4 acquisitions in the time that I've been doing what I've been doing. And not one time did I go out and think to myself, okay, I need to expand the company, or I need to expand this practice and have an M&A search firm go whatever, do what they do. Every company I've acquired has been a business partner of ours for at least 3 years, if not longer. So I already knew them, they knew us, we knew their cultures, we were already doing business together. So instead of, it's not even a merger. It's kind of, all we did was just take what we already knew was there and go forward with it. And so you hear about companies with hiring suddenly people into these positions or making these acquisitions, and there's culture clash and process clash and everything else. It's just, for me, it hasn't had to be that way because we've all known each other going into this and we've all agreed to get into it together. So just a different way to do it.
So the formula essentially is to not have a formula.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm hearing you right, it's to get to know people, and see if you get a sense of if the fit's going to be there. And what I infer from that is it's not simply about the level of technical skill and talent that they have. It's also about is the personality gonna mesh with
Absolutely.
How would you describe the company's personality?
Extremely passionate would be probably the biggest thing. Passionate, fun, extremely hardworking. Those words come to mind when I look at it. Caring, very caring overall. And so, yeah, those would be kind of the big words for me when I'm thinking about the personality of the business.
You know, I imagine and I imagine this because it's true in any company that has a really healthy, strong culture, that there are going to be people that don't fit, even though you thought they would.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a rare occurrence with you guys? And in the circumstances where it hasn't worked out,
Mm-hmm.
is there any kind of pattern that emerged as to why a person would not feel comfortable working at the company?
Sure. Of course, there are scenarios you can't get them all right, so to speak. Overall, we've had scenarios where we put people in positions that, because they've been with us maybe a long time or something along those lines, and there's a secondary aspect of things that I'm dealing with in these times, and that's we're reaching a size where keeping the culture, there's certain things you need to have from a leadership standpoint and certain things that need to change in order to keep the culture. We've actually I'm going to veer back to your question, but I actually want to get back to that because it's an important topic. And so the cool thing about this business is when somebody is not a cultural fit, because so many are, it stands out. And I don't have to even manage that. I will hear about it. Let's put it that way, so to speak. And so I don't know that there's a formula for that. I mean, you do your best to get it right. There's so many elements. Somebody with the greatest resume in the world can be the worst cultural fit, for your business. Sometimes you hire people that have leadership titles, management titles. I don't like the word manager because I don't think my business needs those. I think they need leaders. I think they need people that contribute to the greater cause of delivering great experiences to our customers, so to speak. And so the more important thing is, if you reach this critical mass, then you end up with your people protecting the culture and telling you, and all then I have to be willing to do, or whoever, is take action in that. And that's the other thing, is they watch. And if you don't take action with that, then you end up with, you risk damaging or destroying your culture overall. So it's tricky. And the more people
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, that's it.
Talk a little bit about the challenge of of maintaining that culture as the company is growing?
I will tell you what I'm doing and what we're doing about that. So our company does $250 million a year in revenue. There is a belief across the board that we could 2x, 3x, 4x that, not because I want to, but because it's just becoming that, so to speak. And in talking to people, it's funny, some of the ones I'm interviewing right now and talking to, they're like, well, we love your culture and this is such a good size of company to be in. But once you hit that $750 million to $1 billion a year mark, the culture just goes to hell. And so I'm like, and I kept hearing this over and over with different people that I would talk to. And I'm like, why don't we get together now and start, if we know that that is a byproduct, then let's not be the company that lets the culture go to hell. If we just let it go there, go to those bigger numbers, then inevitably it will. But to me, it's just a problem statement, a known problem statement. Overall, it's just like when outside money comes in, it's known that everything looks like it's going to be better and is for about a year and a half. And then, certain financial KPIs aren't met and things happen and things change and new managers come in and all that other good stuff. So if I can maneuver without doing that, then how do we maneuver north of where we are with a constant conversation around how we keep that culture or keep it close, at least overall? So I don't have the answer to that question, but what I can tell you is internally, we are highly aware of both the opportunity and the risk being, again, damaging or destroying the culture that makes the business what it is. So we would swim north and then fall south very quickly. So,
I don't think I've heard anybody describe the challenge and the way to meet that challenge in quite that way before, Mike. It's you do hear a lot about a lot of horror stories about how we used to be, the good old days around here. When we were a smaller company, everybody knew each other, and then we grew and we are just
I get some of that. It happens.
of our former self. And it happens a lot. What I haven't heard anybody say before, if I heard you correctly, is, hey, team, let's acknowledge that we have a great culture. Let's acknowledge that we'd like to grow this company. So what are we going to do, all of us, to make sure that as we grow, we don't compromise our culture? And that, in fact, we can grow because of our culture and the attention that we put on it. And just have that conversation with everybody. Yep. And then we're all figuring it out together. And as opposed to just a fait accompli, this is just our destiny. It's a choice of stay where we are, grow a little bit, or go through the roof and kill what we love about this place in the process. Why does it have to be either or? And what you're saying is it doesn't, as long as we start to work now and anticipate that.
But it will be if we do the same thing everybody else has done. So,
right.
So whatever different is, we'll figure out or try, and that'll be part of what keeps our culture, is our focus on doing just that.
Yes. So one of the things that I always love about talking with you, Mike, is, and it's the reason I asked the question, because I wanted to see it again, and I wanted our listeners to hear you say it. Whenever I ask the question, how do you feel about your employees? The love that you have for them is evident. It just emanates from you. The question that I have for you, on not just for my own curiosity, but on behalf of everybody who's listening, that feeling that you have, that obvious, authentic feeling that you have that comes across in how you talk about them, what does it look like in the way that you lead, in the way that you actually do business? So if I were to ask, just take a random number of folks who work in Entisys360 and say, how do you think Mike feels about you? Oh, he loves us. How do you know? What would the answer be? Or what would some of the answers be? What does it look like for you?
This is a hard one for me. I mean, you get to know people personally, again, as the company gets bigger, how do you do that? You lay yourself out And, I've made some mistakes, and it's interesting because I do weekly video addresses with our company. And when I make errors, I actually say them to everybody overall. You take, I, I had something recently where I was interviewing some people for some key roles in our business, and it was a lunch, I think. And afterwards, somebody called the guy that introduced me to him and said, "Is that guy for real? Is that authentic? What I just felt?"
That guy meaning you is Mike for real?
Yeah, yeah. And he said, "Yeah." He goes, "There's nothing else hidden there. What you see is what you get, basically." So again, I don't know. I don't try. I just have been doing my thing my way for so long, and I'm so interested and fascinated with people. I suppose that's a big part of it too. I really am. I have a curious nature about me, and I'm always, what's the thing? I get excited about what people are about and what excites them, and just, their ideas and everything else. I'm not about shutting everything down or just being a boss or anything like that. And I just think, to live a life where you spend so much time with so many people and to not have a close connection with those people would be just a total lost opportunity from a lifetime perspective, not from a business perspective.
So your curiosity about them transcends the job function that they have, is about them as human beings in their lives and
Yes.
so forth. And the way that you satisfy that curiosity, the way that you learn, I'm going to state the obvious here, is by spending time with them and talking.
Yep.
That's really
leave your ego, if you have one, wherever. You don't need it when you're dealing with good people, and you don't need it either when they're dealing with people that support them and believe in them.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is that, so again, the question on the table is what does love look like in the way that you lead? So it's not just a feeling, but an observable practice. So part of that is you spend time with people, just talking human to human and getting to know them. Fascinated with them, you're curious about them. They know that because of the questions that you ask and the attention that you give them, right? So that's the very simple observable behavior. The other thing I'm imagining is when they hear you talk about them, like you have with us today, and as people, as your team listens to this podcast later on, that's a further piece of evidence about how you feel. Let me add one thing, just from a fly on the wall perspective, that I've seen you do a couple of times. It's been a number of years, but I did spend a fair amount of time with you guys 5-6 plus years ago, before you went through this big growth spurt, I think. And I saw you we spent the day up in Irvine. We took a couple of videographers with us and interviewed a bunch of folks in the office. It was a great day. We had a great time. A couple of young videographers, including my brother-in-law, and they worked really hard. The camera crew, your employees were very, everybody on the team was very generous with their time. And then at the end of the day, you took everybody out for dinner.
That's right.
I'm not gonna. I remember this vividly. I had such a great time watching this happen. You took everybody out for dinner, and everybody who wanted to come that was available in the office, right? And the camera crew, which is my brother-in-law Justin and his buddy, who, by the way, have since gone to film school and are in that business. And
so cool. That's awesome.
He does like these incredible music videos. Unbelievably talented. But back then, they were starving students. They came along to dinner. We went to this big fancy steakhouse in Orange County, and I will never forget seeing Justin at this table, the giant eyes, as they kept bringing out plates and plates of food. And I was
Yeah.
like, what can I order? And you said to him, whatever you want, man. You get whatever you want. And, that dinner had, I mean, I don't know what that dinner cost, but to these kids, I say kids, they're, college age.
Yeah.
It just absolutely blew their mind. And what that left me with was just this wonderful feeling and spirit of generosity, that exists in that place. And I'm not saying it all flows from your head. This is, obviously, you're, as the leader of the organization, you influence that, but I felt that from every person that I met there. So it's a very simple thing, right? But it all ties together. There are a lot of leaders out there that will buy people dinner, that'll throw money at parties and do that kind of a thing. But if that's all there is, then it's just, oh, thanks for the dinner, And then if they're treated like crap at work the next day, who cares? But it all comes together, doesn't it?
Yep. Absolutely. And, I guess you see the things where I've seen businesses where they try to do the dinners and nobody wants to go because they feel like it's another punishment and they can't go home to their family.
Right.
And you can see it, it's not the act, like we were talking about earlier, it's not the act. It's really, or the statement, if you want to call it that, it's what's underneath. And it's people that like to spend more time. My industry, another very interesting thing that we did in the last 5 to 7 years, I would say. My industry has a lot of conferences, a lot of getaways, a lot of this, a lot of that. And there's a lot of time spent away from home. And I also believe that because people have to work so hard that their spouses or husbands or wives or whatever give a lot for them to do what they do for us. And it's not just about making money. And so we have purposely created in any and every possible scenario. And I got a lot of industry resistance from this at first, but now I don't. Spouse inclusive opportunities, whether we're traveling, well, nobody's traveling, but when we were traveling to conferences and things like that, or doing our own things and keeping the door wide open and not saying, no, this is work, and, that type of thing. And in getting to know these people and their spouses as couples and what have you, bring another level of closeness and care into the equation. And again, you can't write that in a business plan. You actually have to want to do that, and you have to actually like each other for that to actually work. So
we're going on a business trip. We're going to a conference, and your husband, wife, significant other is invited.
Yes.
And included.
Wow,
that's fantastic. So as we bring this discussion in for a landing, and we could talk all afternoon, no question. What advice, coming back around to, the whole premise of this podcast, and of course my whole body of work, is that love is just damn good business. So what advice would you give me if I were a version of your in the drawer self, as somebody who's, whether or not I'm the positional head of a company, but just as a person who really lights up at this whole idea, feels right, the instinct, the impulse is there. Yeah, love is a practice. It is something I believe will make business and the world at large better, but I'm reluctant. What advice would you give me?
It's not as scary as you think. Take that first step, and you'll find out how many more you'll want to take and be willing to take after the fact, for sure. And then soon enough, you won't just be taking the steps, you'll be pursuing it, because you'll find it's not a way to run a business. You'll find it's a way of life.
Oh, beautiful. I just flashed on a story. Every now and then I'll get a text from you, and you'll give me a little vignette of something that just happened. Mm-hmm. And I remember one of them. I just flashed back on this, where you were in some kind of conference or a meeting with other CEOs, and you were going around the table, and the task was say a couple things about what's important in business or important in the way you run your business or something like that. Does that ring a bell to you? And I remember it came around to you and you said, love.
I've probably done that a few times.
Yeah. Yeah.
It does quiet the room, but then it makes people think, and it definitely creates conversation. And again, I have no problem sharing that, right now. It's funny. When it comes to LEAP as a whole, love, energy, audacity, and proof, it's like I almost have added an extra A, but then it sounds funny, LEAP, but love, energy, audacity, and authenticity is the thing to me too. If you can't be authentic, the rest of it doesn't matter. You just won't get away with it, or at least for very long. So.
Yeah, that's great. And I always looked at authenticity as it's the environment in which this takes place. It's not pretend to love, pretend to generate energy, pretend to be audacious, and give us just as much proof as you can without having to give too much. If it's not real, then it doesn't work. Yep. But it also doesn't hurt to put much attention on that question. Am I showing up as who I really am? Am I being an authentic leader? Because that's what people respond to.
Yeah,
it's fantastic. So, Mike, if people want to learn more about Entisys360, want to connect with you, and give you a chance to make some new friends, maybe there's somebody listening to this that thinks they'd be a great fit for you guys. What's the best way for people to get in touch?
Well, the website's www.entisys360.com. Entisys is spelled Entisys. It's a hard one that I take a lot of flack for, but it is what it is. Or just send me an email at mike.s@entisys.com.
Great. And we'll put all that in the notes and on the blog post and everything else. Mike, thank you so much, man. It's been a real treat and tremendously valuable for me and for everybody listening, I'm sure. Hey, everybody, thanks for tuning in to the Love is Just Damn Good Business podcast. And until the next time we meet, don't forget to do what you love in the service of people who love what you do.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Love is Just Damn Good Business with Steve Farber. Join us again next time, because when customer and employee satisfaction just isn't enough anymore, we are here to back you up with specific ideas to operationalize love to make an enormous difference in your business, personal life, and the world around you. Visit our website at stevefarber.com to leave a review. And don't forget to share the love with your colleagues and friends, because after all, it's just damn good business.